Aloha, this is Roger Heska, and I want to talk to you today about something really neat to realize. The topic being, if I could only eat one super green, this would be it. Now, this common green pretty much blows away all other greens and herbs in terms of its overall nutrient variety, but also in the quantity of nutrients as well. And because there are other greens that have, let's say, a higher what is called a nutrient completeness score, which it means it has more, is high in more overall nutrients, just slightly higher. But the quantity of many of those nutrients is nowhere close to this particular green. Okay, so now the way I'm comparing greens here is by calorie, a per calorie, and not by comparing them by the same weight. And the reason is there are vast differences in the calories of greens by the weight. Vast differences. So although comparing by calorie is not perfect, it's what is used by nutritionists and is better than comparing purely by weight. And quite frankly, we don't eat our food based on the weight of the food, but on the number of calories in the food. That's why raw foodists eat way more weight in their foods, and fiber, by the way, because they have a much higher water content and therefore a higher weight. The excess water is heavy. It's not excess, it's vital, and it makes the foods much more heavy and less calorically dense, and therefore raw foodists, to get the same calories, which is generally speaking what you try to do, you're going to have to eat way more weight. All right. So in this video, just for comparison's sake, I'll be comparing two common greens that people think are nutritious, and to give you an idea of what I mean. But first, let's start with revealing what this super green is. All right, and that would be spinach. Okay, so spinach, for just a small amount of calories, provides a whole bunch of stuff. As you'll notice, spinach is 30% protein. Okay, 30% protein, and it has a over perfect so-called amino acid score. So you're getting plenty of all the amino acids. All right. Also, if you look at it, it has a nutrient completeness score of 91. Now, let's go. Well, I'll quickly read this to you. The good. Okay. This food is low, and this is from nutritiondata.self.com. So a lot of the stuff in here is their, or some of the information here is their opinions and not actual fact as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, but this food is low in saturated fat and very low in cholesterol. It is also a good source. When they say good source, it means it's good, but it's not great, of niacin and zinc, and a very good source of dietary fiber. Yes, loaded with fiber, loaded with protein, loaded with vitamin A, loaded with vitamin C, loaded with vitamin E, very high in vitamin K, thiamine, riboflavin, vitamin B6, folate, calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, copper, and manganese. It's just super loaded with vitamins and, more importantly, minerals, which are hard to get enough of just from eating fruit alone. And what you'll notice also is that, and the bad, this food is high in sodium. Okay, this is ridiculous. Okay, Nutrition Data has no understanding that sodium is incredibly important, and when it comes from plant sources, it doesn't do any damage to your body, as opposed to getting salt, which is sodium chloride, which definitely ravages and burns the body. There's a huge difference, and these idiots couldn't tell you the difference. So you can't take everything here as gospel fact because they have certain biases. They're very biased against anything with sugar in it. It's ridiculous. They should have said, oh, this food is bad because it has 56% carbs. So sometimes they'll do stuff like that, just even though the food is low in calories overall, all they say is too high in carbs. But I'm getting sidetracked. So let's go to Chronometer. I went a day in the future, and I just put in two foods, spinach and kale. So we're comparing spinach and kale, comparing 100 calories of each. Now, what you're going to find astonishing is, let's look here first. Okay, right now we're just isolating on spinach. If I click here again, you're going to see 200 calories, and it's going to include both. But right now we're going to isolate on spinach. All right. So as you can see here, 30% protein, 14% fats, 56% carbohydrates. So what's really interesting, out of all my nutrient targets, after eating just 100 calories, just under a pound of spinach, just a pound of spinach, only 100 calories, 40% of my daily nutrient needs, at least according to Chronometer. Now there are many other thousands of nutrients, and phytonutrients and antioxidants and so on, things that Chronometer does not measure. But in the standard nutrients that are measured by the US RDA, spinach, I've reached 40% of my targets just by eating 100 calories of spinach. Now, let's look at kale. And by the way, kale is a really good green too. I'm not disparaging kale at all. So, by calorie, kale is only 26% of the targets. All right? I think you're going to see that across these lines here, and I'm going to show you more detail in a minute, but across these lines here, kale I think only wins on one of these per calorie. Okay? So let's go. So kale has 24% fiber. Spinach has 32% fiber. Spinach has 147% iron. Kale has 38% iron. Kale has 31% calcium. Spinach has 43% calcium. Spinach has 21% zinc. Kale has 10% zinc. Okay, kale has 272% vitamin C. I think this is where kale wins. And then spinach has 136%. Either way, you're kicking ass on vitamin C. And you got to understand, some nutrients are extremely easy to get on a raw food diet, and vitamin C would be one of them. So I tend to favor greens that give you nutrients that are hard to get from eating either other greens and or just an overall raw food diet. Okay, so vitamin C, spinach loses. Let's look at selenium. Selenium, 8%. Selenium is a nutrient which is quite difficult to get on a raw vegetarian or raw vegan diet, unless you eat, let's say, a Brazil nut, which just one nut will give you over 100%. And there's some other foods that are high in it too, but that's for another day. So selenium's 8%, kale is 3%. So spinach is not great in selenium, but it's medium, okay? But it definitely beats kale per calorie. So kale, 21% vitamin E, spinach, 57% vitamin E. All right, so let's now take a look in more detail quickly. So spinach, and one thing I found very interesting about spinach, look at the sodium. Do you know how hard it is to get sodium on a raw food diet unless you're eating greens and celery, for instance? I found out that by weight, spinach has almost the same amount of sodium as celery. Now, by calorie, celery is much higher. Celery is actually much lower in calories by weight than spinach. But either way, spinach is probably like the second best source of sodium you could get on a natural healing sodium that doesn't damage you. And did you know that sodium, for instance, I found here's how we're gonna compare, okay? Because Chronometer has a very nice feature. So anyway, so let's look at the sodium. So 32% sodium overall from eating spinach and kale. But kale only gives you 6% of the sodium, where spinach gives you 26%. Okay, let's look at the zinc. Spinach 21%, kale 10. Let's look at the selenium. So 8 and 3 in favor of the spinach. Potassium. Even potassium, spinach is over double that of kale, but potassium on a raw food diet is not a problem to get at all. Most raw foods contain from decent amounts to tons of potassium. Phosphorus. Okay, so spinach wins here slightly, 30% to 27%. Manganese, let's take a look. Spinach kills kale, 170% to 58%. Let's look at magnesium. Spinach, 82% to 23%, kale. Let's look at iron. Spinach, 147%, kale, 38%. Let's look at copper. Kale wins that. Kale kills spinach and copper, but I can just tell you that copper is not that difficult to get if you're eating a lot of greens, and it's just not difficult to get at all. It's in a lot of fruit and stuff. So it's not really necessary to get all that copper. But you definitely want something that's high in iron. Okay, so spinach does the trick there. It's really important. And like I said, selenium can be hard to get, so eating spinach will help you, top it off. Okay, and let's finally look at calcium. So spinach is 43% calcium, kale is 31%. So spinach outdoes kale in that department as well. So vitamin K, look at that. Just from those two greens, from like 200 calories, you almost get 3,000% vitamin K. So they're both exceedingly high in vitamin K. Spinach is even higher. Vitamin E, spinach 57%, kale 21%. Vitamin D, there is none. Go out in the sun, get your vitamin D. Vitamin C, kale wins, as we saw before. So one of the few things where kale wins. Vitamin A, spinach crushes it in the vitamin A department. Folate, spinach crushes it in the folate department, 211% to 72%. Vitamin B6, spinach wins 50% to 33%. Pantothenic acid, spinach wins 6% to 4%, which is quite a significant difference, by the way. Although it's very easy to get, again, pantothenic acid on a raw fruit and greens based kind of raw food diet. Nuts and seeds and savory raw carbs too. Niacin, which is vitamin B3, spinach wins 20% to 13%. Vitamin B2, riboflavin, spinach wins 63% to 20%. It's pretty much triple. Thiamine, spinach 28% to 19%. So you're starting to see why spinach is such a super green. Now I understand, spinach is high in oxalates. So if you were a person who struggled mightily with oxalates, and that's because your body's not eliminating toxins properly, you can fix that, you can heal that. So at some point you'll be able to, I do believe you'll be able to eat way more levels of oxalates, because quite frankly raw foods in general are loaded with oxalates. Spinach might be the highest, but they're in most raw foods. So if you want to eat raw, you've got to be eliminating properly. Your kidneys have to work properly. And if you're having oxalate issues, it's because you're just not eliminating toxins. Your kidneys, your liver, your gallbladder, whatever, these systems in your body, your adrenal glands, they need to be addressed and fixed so that you can eat raw food. Now, let's look at this side of the table. I'm not so concerned about calories because they're exactly the same. In this case, water. So spinach even has more water than kale per calorie. Of course, it requires a lot more spinach. So that's neither here nor there. Fiber. Okay, so spinach is significantly, like 50% higher in fiber per calorie than kale is. Let's go down here. Fat. So kale brings you 9% fat and spinach 8% fat. Pretty close. Omega-3s, spinach 38%, kale 23%. Okay, so it's very important to get high sources of omega-3 fatty acids in your diet, and spinach again even wins in that department. Let's take a look here. Omega-6. Kale is higher, quite a bit higher, which is, considering how easy it is to get omega-6, I'd much rather have a green that had very little omega-6, like spinach, but a lot more in the way of omega-3s. It's very easy to get your omega-6s from many other sources, so any food that you can get which is really punching up your omega-3s will really help out your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio and get it properly in line. So let's take a final look at the protein. So spinach, 100 calories of spinach gives you 25% of your daily protein. 25% of your protein. Kale, 17%. And then they'll have a breakdown of each individual amino acid. For instance, cysteine, spinach is 22%, kale 13%. Let's look at this one. This one, spinach again wins. It's isoleucine, 46% to 29%. So as you can see, spinach is an absolute super green, loaded with antioxidants that are not nearly discussed here, loaded with phytonutrients or phytochemicals of all kinds. Now, I'm not saying you should only eat spinach, but I am saying for the greatest bang for your buck, for your calorie, for that matter, and if you want to get in the most nutrients and you only have one green to choose, I would choose spinach. So this is Roger Heska, the Eternal Teenager, and if you liked the video, please give a like, and if you'd like to get notifications of more videos like this from the Eternal Youth, the Eternal Teenager, please subscribe to my channel. All right, thank you, and have a great day.